Hello, welcome to our painting stream. I'm Nichole, this is my dad, Greg. I'm in a smaller chair than I used to be because I am seeing if it's more comfortable. Today we are back with some more miniature painting, getting back onto a regular schedule after the holidays. We're still waiting on some paints, but for the time being, I'm going to be working on some doors. I got some brown in on there, and I'm going to be putting the metal bars on them, and I might be painting in the wood frames on these dungeon tile pieces. Everything here we've 3D printed ourselves, and we printed on those printers. If you're interested in the designers, you can go to our website, dysondungeons.com, and go to the attributions page. If you've been watching, we printed, glued, primed in our painting. Very large stone dungeon set for our D&D stream, which we do Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're starting that back up after a bit of a holiday break. Yeah, what are you painting today?
I don't know. I've been gone for almost a month with one thing or another, so I haven't kept up. Maybe I can paint some of the door frames.
Sure, yeah. So, it's fairly straightforward. I'm looking to do with these. This upward bar here should be wood, as well as the inside of the door frame, but not the base.
Right, and then the back, I imagine.
And the upwards on the... Yeah, basically anything that's not clearly brick.
Yeah,
we'll want
so across the
wood.
top and down the sides.
I'm painting the wood part of the doors in the flat brown Tamiya, but the wood frames don't necessarily need to be the same wood color, but...
What color would we have them?
We're pretty much out of red-brown, so it's either something lighter, or you can also use the flat brown.
No, the red-brown's kind of gone.
Yeah, the red-brown's gone. So if you want, you can just paint them flat brown as well.
Yeah, there's another flat brown here.
Oh, there you go. Then it looks like it was all built out of the same wood at the same time, I suppose.
Yeah.
So
I need to order paint.
Yes.
You were going to make a list.
Gray and brown, a lot.
No, well, yeah.
And if we can...
So is that the gray, the neutral gray? Are they both empty?
They're both empty.
Well,
I've been...
Neutrally.
I got through about half of all of the dungeon tiles in about 1.5 bottles.
Yeah. Have you been doing with brush or with...
brush. Because I wasn't sure if that was good for airbrush or not, so I didn't want to.
Okay, well, I will paint door frames. I can do that.
Okay.
Why don't you give me a bunch of them?
Yep, these are all the door frames in the set. So, if you get through all of those,
and I'll be...
then we'll have them done.
Yeah. Are we going to need other colors too, or just gray and red, brown, and neutral gray?
We will, maybe, but mostly just red, brown, and neutral gray.
And we're going to need washes too, or is there no?
It wouldn't hurt.
We have a lot of the umber washes.
We have a lot of umber wash, and there's a couple black washes in there. I think we're okay for a while because washes stretch fairly well. And if this is your first time watching, a wash is just it's a very thin paint that it's sort of translucent and it seeps into cracks and corners, so it's good for making things look worn or just shading things a slightly darker color. It'll vary a lot depending on what kind of wash. So like a black wash will make things just look darker in general. But we also have like a green wash that we use to create a sort of algae effect on our sewers. A sewer tile set that we made. So you can get different effects with different washes. What I'm doing right now is I'm filling in these sort of wooden parts that sit behind the metal bars on the doors. I did the other side at the end of the last time I was here, and just gonna keep going with it. And if we get through all of this today and still have time, what we'll do is start detailing the dungeon tiles that have gray on them, have their base coat on, and start getting those ready to be finished, basically.
Well, this is a good thing for me to be working on because I have been away for a while. It's odd.
Something nice and straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The doors are fairly simple looking, but they take a bit of work just because there's a lot of metal bars that go over the wood. You want to be a little careful so you don't have to correct mistakes constantly. We'll see how I do. And I hope everyone had a good break, a good holiday, if you're celebrating. We had a pretty nice time. Although it feels pretty good to just start getting back into a rhythm again. Breaks and holidays can be very fun, very relaxing, but they also can be fairly disruptive. And I'm someone who needs a schedule to operate on a day-to-day basis. I have trouble otherwise. So getting back into sort of a normal swing of things without random events and stuff.
Yeah. Having
feels nice.
Big meals.
Yeah, I did a lot of big meal cooking over the last few weeks. Things like that. Nice to go back a little bit more quiet, solitary, regular schedule. Yeah, so that's all I'm doing right now, just getting the brown inside these cells. And I don't have to be particularly careful about getting up on the edges or not yet, because I'm going to be painting over those with a silver. Then I'm going to use a black wash to tone that down to more of an iron, like an oiled iron look. The nice thing about these doors that we're working on in the dungeons is we take a little wire. Actually, usually we just use a clipped piece of paper clip, straighten that out into a wire, and glue it in, and it creates the door hinge for these doors to actually swing open and shut inside of these. So they sit inside of these like that. It's a little hard to see because it's all black right now, but they swing open like that, which is just a nice little thing to have when you're doing a D&D game and you're fighting by a door or something. You don't have to just say I kick the door open or I shut the door before the arrows come flying. You can actually physically close it, and then no one needs to remember what state the door is in. I like little things that you can do in models. There's some other stuff you can do with dungeon tiles, like you can get LEDs and wire them in to have torch and flame effects. I feel like that's maybe a little more than is necessary, especially for like a home game or something like that. I mean, it can look really cool, but doing it yourself can take a lot of work, and a little bit of training. So it's always nice to sort of get something little like this where it doesn't take all that much work, but it adds a really nice sort of effect for gameplay. Another piece that we do like that with these dungeon tiles is we've glued magnets into the base so that they help hold each other together without being like a hard mechanical clip. That adds a nice playability to the piece, without too terribly much work, because the designer who designed these dungeon tiles included spots that you can put these little magnets in. They've actually switched them recently. The older version uses what are sometimes called buckyballs. They're like little neodymium magnet balls that are sort of a toy, but definitely not for children because kids swallow them. But they're a little hard to get because kids swallow them, and they're kind of like not allowed to be sold as a toy anymore, so their availability is not nearly what it used to be. But the designer on these dungeon tiles recently just switched it to work for both buckyballs, but also these like little magnet discs that you can buy much more easily. They're sort of like a watch battery size and shape, and they're just a lot easier to get your hands on and cheaper. That's really nice. We're gonna keep going through our supply of the ball magnets first because we bought a nice bulk amount knowing that we were gonna make a bunch of dungeon tiles. And we wanted them all to be on this magnet system. So we'll keep using those, but in the future, we will most likely be swapping over.
So what I've decided to do with these frames is use a smaller brush to do the interface.
The point where I frequent flyer mom.
And then I'll use a much bigger brush to do the fill in after I've gotten the edges basically painted in.
And we've been talking through, it's probably not coming quite right away, but we are looking at just redesigning the setup for this paint stream in order to get better shots on what we're working on. It's a little hard. You can't see what Dad here is completely off the camera and can't see what he's working on, for example. So we're playing with some ideas without investing terribly much in a bunch of cameras and stuff to create a better visual on what work we're doing on this painting stream. Got a few ideas, but we have a lot of projects to work through first, so I don't have a date for it yet.
To just surprise them and don't tell anybody about it, and then one day they'll tune in and it'll be completely different.
Well, it probably will be completely different suddenly one day, because usually when we do things like that when time is available. So it will be like, okay, today's the day we switch it. But most likely.
Mm-hmm. So will you do a satisfaction survey when you ask people if they like it better or not?
No.
It's just going to be the way it is, huh?
Yep. There's a lot of doors to get through. It's actually gonna take a while. I am halfway through the wood on this one side, and I have painted the other side, the wood on the other side already, luckily. But this is actually the quick and easy part. I could use a bigger brush and just slather it in, but I'm just trying to conserve paint a little bit, you know, by being a little more targeted.
And I've done all of two
of the sidebars,
of just the edges of the door frames.
Yeah, that's one thing. If
the rest of it will go much faster with the bigger brush, but
so if you're painting something like this, where we're putting in wood against stone like this, sometimes it can be a lot easier to paint the edges where it meets a different color with a smaller brush, so you can get a better, more defined line, and then you have a lot more breathing room when you're painting the inside, to use a larger brush, and you can apply a lot more paint quickly. But you have that little area that you've painted in with the color. So, because with more paint and a larger brush, larger surface area, you also give up some detail and control. So by giving yourself that little bit of breathing space, you just help mitigate a lot of accidents, mess, and redoing. Because one of the nice parts of painting is it's very, very hard to permanently screw up. You can pretty much always paint over, re-glue it. You know, there's so many options. You can, if it's really bad, you can strip the paint, things like that. So sometimes I think people approach painting with some trepidation, like, oh my god, if I don't get this on perfectly, the whole miniature is gonna be messed up. But it's actually sort of the opposite. Compared to like inking with like pens or something on paper, there's so much more forgiveness in painting. Because unless you're using a paint that is a little clumpy, it's adding an extra layer on top of the layer you just painted. It isn't really going to show. And if you're using an extra clumpy paint, then, you know, you just thin it down and get it to a better consistency. Monitoring the consistency of your paint is always good. And that's one of the key differences between a good paint and a bad paint, is how well mixed and consistent is it. We like the Tamiyas, which are actually made for
military,
sort of military ships and planes. It's a big popular hobby in Japan, and this is a Japanese paint. Is making little models of airplanes and boats and stuff and painting them very realistically. So they actually make a lot of models and paints in Japan. The other one is Vallejo that we use, right?
Mm-hmm. It's from Spain.
Which is a Spanish one. They're both acrylic, water-based paints. You can use oils and things. You can actually get, if you're doing a lot of like blending and really fine stuff, oils can actually be really good. But oils have a few downsides. They're, I wouldn't say harder, but more, you have to be a lot more careful with them. They take a little bit more setup, but also they're a little bit more, well, they can be a lot more health dangerous for you. So you should wear gloves and stuff if you're doing oil painting, and make sure it's very well ventilated and stuff. There's just a few more dangers. I mean, it's not like it's gonna kill you in a day, but if you're doing a lot of long-term oil painting, you know, you just gotta be a bit careful. Not that you shouldn't be careful with any painting that you do, but some paints are worse than others for that.
Yeah, they actually took a really popular paint off the market a while ago because the solvents in it were carcinogenic. You know, Local, which they had really good metallic.
Yes, and generally speaking, a lot of the health risks with paints come down to the solvents and usually being carcinogenic. That's why if you're doing anything with sprayed paints, whether it's in a can or even an airbrush, because it's aerosolizing the paint, you want to be somewhere fairly well ventilated, or wear a respirator and gloves, things like that, because some of these solvents can absorb through skin and things like that. Not to dissuade anyone, because there's a lot of great entry-level paints that you really don't have to worry about, and as long as you take real basic safety precautions, like
don't eat and drink your paints.
Don't Van Gogh your paints. Things like that, you're generally just fine. No real risks.
No matter how much this looks like really good
chocolate.
Yeah, don't drink it. I mean, it really does look really good.
Melted chocolate. Yeah. Don't be Augustus Gloop with your brown paint. One of the big differences, if anyone's interested, with acrylics and oils, water-based and oil-based, basically, the oils are because they take a while longer to dry, but that also gives you, if you're doing like color blending, there's a lot more that you can do on the model to like blend colors together. So if your character is wearing like a blue cloak and you want it to fade down to black at the bottom or something, that can be a lot easier to do with a oil paint. So there are definitely very distinct advantages to both. And it's just do your research on what you care about and what you want to do when you're buying your materials painting. So I have gotten through all of the wood sections of the doors. So my next step is going to be doing the metal on one side of it, and then swapping to the metal on the other side. And to do that, it's been a while, so all of my brushes have been displaced. That one's okay. And this is a piece that broke the epoxy. You can see here, those are the magnets, the yellow and orange piece right there. the the epoxy didn't hold perfectly on this one piece, so later on we're just gonna have to glue it back on. Set it up there as a reminder that I'll remember in a few months. Here's a pile of brushes. The one I want is probably in here. Maybe. Let's see. Or maybe it got placed over by you.
Were you looking for those?
Yeah. You're fine.
These two?
Yeah. So, oops. These are some fancier brushes that we got for some more of the detailing work. I'll probably use this blue one. And I'm going to be doing it in this. This is Game Color, which is made by Vallejo, I believe. Yeah. And it's they have several different, so like, let me see. Is there one that also just says?
This one that says Model Color.
Yeah. So there's like Game Color, there's Model Color. These are both Vallejo made. This one actually says Vallejo on the bottom here. The Game Color one here says Acrylicos Vallejo on the back here. And it has the little AV logo. So sometimes brands have multiple labels. I don't know why corporations do that. Maybe so you buy their product twice or something. But anyway, I'm gonna start going along with this silver. This is called Chainmail Silver. But I find it's a pretty good consistency and color, especially once it's gotten a black wash on it. It ends up looking very nice. Just giving it a good shake.
Yeah, that's a little more viscous than these metallics.
Yeah, so some of these other metallics we have, like this one,
are really nice paints.
They're very nice, but these are airbrush paints. So if you're using it even says airbrush colors on it. So they're a bit thinner than something that you might normally buy for a brush, which is fine usually. We've used them with brushes with no problem before. But it is something to keep in mind about consistency. And for something like this, I want it slightly thicker than an airbrush color will provide, because otherwise it will run a little more freely and go down into the into the wood sections of the door.
Yeah, those metallics are made largely for aircraft models.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like aluminum airplanes that don't have paint color on them, so yeah, get an aluminum airbrush paint and you can base coat the whole thing pretty quickly with an airbrush.
Yeah, because you're covering, pretty large surface areas. And you don't want brush marks and stuff on it. You want it really smooth looking, so those are really good for that. In fact, they even do work with brushes over large areas because they're, liquid enough, thin enough so that they don't come up.
You don't usually deal with brush mark issues too much on smaller models, just because you're using a very small brush and it's in such a small area. But it's something you can keep an eye out for. Oops. So, and there will be, I just got a tiny bit of silver paint on the wood, below on the bottom of the door here. That's gonna happen. It's an easy thing to fix. I do after I finish painting a model, and before I go to do like any washes and shading on it, I like to go through with a fine-tooth comb basically and clean up any small spots that might have happened. They're really easy to fix up. So once I get this side of the door painted on, I will show you sort of where I'm going with this door. And it's going to be fairly bright and shiny because it's not washed yet. That is a-okay. One of the things you sort of develop as you paint more and more is you kind of know what basically the sketch version of the paint is going to look like versus the final version. And sometimes it looks really weird or really shiny, and you know that it's not going to stay that way. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Yeah. You might be able to start seeing it here from a distance, but I'll hold it up once I get the rest of the frame on. Almost there. One of the last things I'll do is the sides of the door. Just so I have a place I can kind of hold it without getting covered in paint. But here's what the door is basically gonna look like. It's a lot shinier than the finished version will be because I'm going to wash it down. And you can see there's one or two spots of silver on the wood there that I'm going to just touch up with a tiny splotch of the brown after it dries. But that's what I'm doing. Little iron barred door. I'm going to go through the other 9 of these. By the time I get back, this first one should be dry enough that I can flip it over and do the other side of it. Yeah, so the thing with scenery painting like this, as I call it sometimes, is sometimes it's a bit repetitive. You end up, especially in a dungeon set where you're painting 10 door frames, that you can use to mix and match and be really cool in your D&D game. It's not quite the same as painting like a monster figure where it's just like there's 1, maybe 2 of any given thing on it, and you get to do a bunch of really cool looking like magic orbs or velociraptor teeth, I don't know, whatever you're painting. But
yeah, by the time you get to about the 7s out of 10, it's like, no one will ever see that spot.
But doing a good job, like being fairly detailed on set dressings like this, it can pay off in the long run, because you have, honestly, these doors are going to get used 100 times more than the like giant scorpion you're painting or whatever. It's just something I've painted and we've never actually used in a game. So there is, even though it's a little less exciting painting a whole bunch of the same thing over and over like this, it gives you so many options for play that is just really nice.
Yeah. And as we discovered with the show, and the stream, that larger sets really make a difference. When we started out, it was like
I'm actually gonna shift the camera down a little. That's
like a 5x6 or something dungeon, the very first one or two we made.
There we go.
You know, and they were nice because you could see what was going on, or it was just like a single bridge or something. But now we've got larger ones. We can make them more complicated. They're large enough so you can put chests and furniture and things inside the sets.
Yeah, little doodads, basically. Bookshelves, beds, chests, crates. Those are all really nice little set dressings, especially if you get some really nice generic ones. Like in D&D, a chest can go pretty much anywhere in any setting. So you actually get a lot of value for a fairly limited amount of work to paint a few chests, but you have something you can throw in almost any setting. So sometimes doing mundane items like that can be a little like, ugh, do I really want to paint a 5th bookshelf? But when your characters are bursting into a library, you might like having 5 bookshelves.
Yep. Otherwise, you have to imagine.
Ew, gross.
Yeah.
Good place D&D to use their imagination.
You know, you have to imagine many bookshelves when in fact you could just simply have many bookshelves.
So these are coming along all right. I have 3 so far. I like to try and wipe my brush off periodically. It can, some of the paint can start clumping in the bristles, which leads to an inconsistent application. So just taking the time to occasionally get some of the excess paint off your brush, even if you're painting the same color over and over, can give you a better overall paint. So I always kind of like how this Chainmail Silver looks once it gets the wash on it. It has a nice oiled iron, well-used look to it. Although it's a bit bright going on, I think.
Yeah, before it's washed, it's really shiny. Especially when you've got a large area like that.
That bright shininess is what lets it show through the wash so well. Because it's getting... I try and just do like a drop or two of paint at a time, even when I'm doing large projects like this, because you can always get more out of the bottle. Can't usually get it back in without a lot of work. But that's sort of like, if you know you're gonna be washing something, shading it down, and you still want that shiny effect to sing through it, having a very bright, shiny base can help you achieve that. It'll work with you. So even though nothing Except like mithril or something might be this shiny normally, or like some sort of magic metal. Once it has that wash on it and it's really toned down a lot, the high reflectivity of the paint will still give it a luster that something like just a gray paint wouldn't do. And we're in the process of, you might, I don't know, if you follow our YouTube channel, you'll probably seen a explosion of videos as we've been uploading the backlog of all of these painting streams onto YouTube. If people are interested in watching, you can go and sort of pick which project you're interested in seeing and go through our backlog and see sort of what sort of weird things we painted over the months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, painted some minifigs, did those nicely. Tents, crates and barrels.
Horses, crypts, well, a crypt. Did we do the bridge on stream, or was that before we started?
If we streamed the bridge or not. The bridge was pretty cool.
River tiles with water effect.
We still think some of our best work was the sewer tiles, especially the way you use the shading, the different washes. Mossy and the acrylic for the little streams that run through them. I mean, the epoxy really worked well.
Yeah, so you have a little wet trickle running through the drainage ravine parts of the sewer that we did with some epoxy.
Yeah.
Although if you wanted them a little more full, we could also use the artificial water.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I must say, so far, I'm a lot more comfortable in this chair, even though it's lower. The stool I'd been using was a little too tall. It was causing me to have to bend over a bit more than was comfortable without support. So it caused some pain in my lower back to sit in it for a long period of time. So that's why I'm trying out. I would say this new chair, but this chair is actually way older than that other stool.
Yeah, it's an antique stool. It's made out of bent wood. It's actually pretty cool looking.
Whereas the other one's a very generic, not very versatile stool that I think we got from my aunt when she moved.
And the stool I'm sitting on is also ancient, in a sense. I'm not sure ever where it came from, but I used to build model planes when I was young, in my early teens, and this is actually the stool I had in the basement in my parents' house that I used at the workbench when I was building those models. It's been recovered once. My dad recovered it with some material he got from his work. I would say not expert recovering, but it's padded, so
So it's got that going.
Yeah, it's a little soft around the butt. Yeah. So it's kind of a weird little family heirloom that gets to be used again for pretty much the same thing it was used for originally. I think it probably came from one of the neighborhood taverns that used to be on like every other block corner when I was growing up in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was something they were throwing out because it was, they were replacing it with something better, and my dad picked it up and brought it home and put a new seat on it.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Because it's definitely an old bar stool from an old bar in Milwaukee.
So it has a long and storied history, basically.
Long history.
How are your door frames going?
I've got 2.5 left to do the edges, and then I'll start doing this going in.
Nice.
Yeah, at the rate this is going, we'll be finished by the time the show is done. Or maybe sooner than that. Oh yeah, if you do look at the old YouTubes, I think there's some where we did houses.
Oh yes, there's a lot where we did a number of houses. We did 3 Vikings and 2 Tudor style houses.
Yeah, the Tudor style houses, that'll be interesting to watch because there was a lot of detail in there.
Yes. You were gonna say something about them?
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're gonna watch one.
Those are good ones to check out. I think actually we did 3 Tudor style houses.
Mm-hmm. There were 3.
There's the white one, the purple one, and the green one.
That was one of those where there was a lot of
Little
on the base coat, and then you had to do the cross braces for the exposed wood, and then the window frame.
The window frames took quite a bit of work to get through because they were all they all had like a metal, I don't know, grid.
Yeah, I mean they were originally really small pieces of glass, right?
Held up between lead.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this sort of sideways grid pattern over all of the windows, and there's a lot of work to get those looking good.
That was good.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nikki did an amazing job with the Jaguar.
Which I use in the show sometimes now that I've seen one.
Yeah, I mean with the spots, the detail in how the spots were formed, which was like 3 levels. So if you want to see that, I'd say that would be fun to watch too, because just the detail it took, because the spots are different on different parts of the animal. They're not just a single color.
Mm-hmm. There's sort of a little ring.
Mm-hmm.
Almost.
So I see you've been experimenting with mixing colors for so long.
Lexi has. I Soloth here, the his sort of mithril armor she's working on. She wanted like her blue, this light blue, but make it metallic and shiny. So she mixed a silver and a turquoise together, create a reflective color.
Yeah, this is a nice thing about some of the metallics. I mean, you just get a plain old silver, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you can mix it with other colors, and it keeps its shininess, its metallic sheen. Which you did to good effect on these crystals that you did.
Oh, yeah. Although I didn't mix colors for that, I layered them.
Layered.
This paint's getting a little dry and clumpy, so I'm going to clean my brush off with some water and get a new spot filled. Maintaining your brush is always a good thing to do, especially it can be one of those things where you're like, if you're really focused in, you're like, I really don't want to mess with that right now, but it can give you a lot better control and avoid spots you gotta fix if you just periodically check in on your brush, make sure it's not clumping, make sure it's clean.
Yeah, and the finer the brush, the more quickly that happens.
Yes.
Like you get these ones with like 2 or 3 little bristles. Well, it's hardly any paint, and the paint dries quickly, and the next thing you know is you've got a bristle and a ball on the end.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm over halfway through my doors. I didn't even notice. I was so zoned in on it. I have 10 doors that I am painting here, and I am on my 6th one right now. Well, this side of a 6th one. I do have the back sides to paint still. So technically, I'll be halfway done when I'm done with these 4. But I like to break it up into chunks. I feel accomplished partway through. And then, if I get through these doors today, and we don't have gray paint yet, which takes a little while with shipping, I'll probably start doing some of the detailing and finishing work on the half of the dungeon tiles that are grayed in. Looks like you're on your second to last door frame.
Yeah, getting close there. Then I'll get out the bigger brush and hopefully not get too careless. I know you go through all the trouble with a little brush of detailing it and not getting paint where you don't want it. You get the big brush out and go, oops.
Alright.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of little silver lines. At least this painting these does have a silver lining.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That was bad.
Mm-hmm. These are going to be very secure doors with how much iron they have on them, but this set's sort of designed to be like a keep or castle or some sort of fortification, so I kind of figured they'd have very heavy-duty doors, generally speaking, which is why I am going kind of like this banded iron. I could have done it a little bit differently, where I had like the silver bands, but then this larger outside piece could have been like a different wood, something like that. But I wanted these to be sort of higher security, stronger, tougher doors.
Where said Zoria can't unlock?
Oh, she could definitely unlock these.
It only take 5 minutes.
1 to 5 million seconds. The worst part right now for me is I'm 2 doors away from being done and getting to do the exact same thing over again. Trying hard not to think about that right now as I wrap up these signs. Although I'll probably take a short break, let them dry a little because I'll be turning them over.
Mm-hmm.
Clean up my brush, things like that. Although the one I did first should be pretty dry even now. These acrylics dry pretty quickly. You know, over a couple minutes, depending on if you've done anything to them or not. In terms of like thinning, stuff like that. You finished the detail part of the door frames.
Mm-hmm. Yay. Get out the Airbrush, use my paint.
Cover more surface area.
So, now I'm using a brush with a
Wide, flat
flatter thing.
brush.
Yeah, brush, so that I can just get the parts that are still flat.
And I'll show you a finished version once you get
one done.
Get one covered. One of the dangers I'm discovering right now of painting while you own cats is that sometimes you get a cat hair, because cat hairs are everywhere when you own a cat. There it is. Like, the cats aren't even down here, it's just like they just float ambiently through the air sometimes. Alright. 2 more doors to do. And your frame is almost done?
This one, yeah.
And these are the most detailed sections of the dungeon that we're producing right now. These dungeon tiles that we're painting, getting in the door frames and the doors. The rest of it's almost all just stone block, which we're going to do a bit of detailing on, but doesn't require nearly the amount of detail that something like an iron banded door requires.
So, I showed them the door frame.
Sure. This is still wet, so it's a little shiny, but here is just a nice wood frame built into a stone dungeon piece. So that's 1 of 10.
This part does go fast.
Yes, but you have to still be a little careful because you're dealing with a bigger brush, which means it's a little easier to make a mistake. And we don't really have any gray right now. Then you might be able to squeeze a tiny bit out of the bottom one of those jars.
Yeah.
But
put a little alcohol in it and squeeze some color.
Some life out of a very well used jar of paint. Okay. Almost done with one side of all the doors. Once I get through all of the iron parts of these doors, the next step for me is to there's only a couple spots, honestly. I've been doing pretty good. Where I just need to cover up a little silver that got on the wood part of the door. And that will take just half a second. It'll dry quick because it's just this tiny little splotch of brown. And then I'll be able to go through and get all of the doors shaded. Get this silver toned down quite a bit so it looks more like a nice, well-used piece of iron. I'm not gonna make them rusty because I don't know what state the keep is gonna be when we're using it. Sometimes it'll be a new keep, sometimes it might be an old abandoned castle full of ghosts or something. You don't really know. So unless you're making something story specific, it's good to just sort of play into the terrain itself. If these were old, cracked stone dungeons pieces, I might consider using like an umber wash and making these doors kind of rusty looking, instead of just oiled and used. But since these are considerably nicer, not cracked ruins, I'm going to work under the assumption that, generally speaking, we're not going to want rusty doors. But, you know, it can be a really cool effect if you have like a iron golem you're painting or something, to put some like rusty spots in areas where it's maybe a little more exposed, or to like the elements, things like that. It can add a whole lot of character to a piece by just doing these like little spot weathering effects like that. Make it look worn in and used. Like maybe an area on an iron golem that rubs against itself a lot would be a little brighter and shinier, because it's constantly sort of scraping at itself. Things like that, it can be fun to think about when you're doing a model. It's kind of the most fun part of it for me, but
it's imagining the use and the abuse.
But with a set like this, you know, it's modular. You don't, like, if I was painting a wagon, for example, I can try and sort of give a sense of things getting shoved in and out of it a whole bunch and scraping on the lip, and then maybe like the corners don't get as clean, so they're all darkened and stuff from things that have spilled in the wagon. You know, you can do things like that, but with a modular dungeon set, you have to be a little more generic with your design. That doesn't mean that you can't do things like when I'm painting the floor tiles, I'll probably occasionally put like a random splotch here or there, like a darker splotch where something may be spilled, and that's just really subtle kind of set dressing that will add a feeling of like use and lived inness without being like, oh wow, that's a very specific thing. Like, I probably won't put blood splotches on the floor, because that would imply something way different than just like a generic black or brown splotch, or it could be anything that has spilled and dried in that area. Okay. So, what I have here are the one side of 10 doors, all painted up. I'm gonna give my brush a little cleaning, but I still have some paint in my cup, so I'm gonna dig right into the other side, starting with the one I painted first. That is dry. Your door frames are looking nice.
Thank you. This is the fifth one.
So, here's one side, back to the other side. But the nice part is, once I get through all of this silver and a tiny bit of cleanup, honestly not all that much cleanup, I will get to go through and make them look a little more rugged and exciting for a door, I suppose I should qualify.
Well, yeah. I mean, for Zoria, a door should be pretty exciting.
Oh god, she's seen doors before.
Of course. Now you know how they work too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And I'll tell you, unlock.
Okay. Oh. I know this isn't nearly as exciting as like a character figure. Unfortunately. But I think it does look really amazing when you have all of it together and you have this huge dungeon put together. That's the most gratifying part of all of this sort of repetitive set.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Set building.
And then you see your character figures come in.
Standing in this space that you've assembled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. You can probably see just behind my shoulder here a little bit of the dungeon sitting on the shelf behind me, on the counter behind me. That's about half of it. The other half is waiting on some more gray paint for the base coat. And it's down in a bin right now. But I got through all the most annoying pieces. That is, the pieces that aren't just like floors and walls. Windows, little hallway terminations, things like that. That just required a little bit extra to paint. I went and did all of those first, so that when I got to the rest of the pieces, I'd just glide right through it. Okay, so I remember which ones are the painted ones and which ones are the unpainted ones. I'm moving the painted ones over here and keeping my unpainted ones on this side.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise...
Because once you paint the other side, then both sides look like they're painted.
Yes. Just for my own sake. Try and keep them organized. And then, of course, once I get through this side of them, I will need to quickly go and apply around the edge of each, but that should really take no time at all. And is not going to be particularly careful kneading, because the only thing that it could spill over onto is more of the same color. So, at least that will be fairly straightforward. Okay, that's 2 down. 8 to go. Why don't you talk about what you did for Christmas?
What I did for Christmas, what we did for Christmas is that Gretchen and I went to Germany to visit my son Alex and his wife Erica. We went to a place up on the northern part called Lübeck, which had a couple of really nice Christmas markets. They were open. The main one was really cool because it was a simple thing, but it had a really neat effect. They put a pole up in the middle, and then just strung lights out radially from that. So it was like being inside of a
light tent.
Yeah. Which we went at night. Which isn't hard to do because it's far enough north that there was like
2 hours of sunlight.
Well, a little more than that, but not much. This is 5 hours of sunlight a day. So it got dark at like 3:30. So it was pretty easy to see it in the dark. And then they were contiguous. They all just kind of one ran into each other. There was one that had these rose-colored stars, big starlights hanging across the top, and that was a really neat effect.
Oh, that's pretty close,
like maybe, I don't know, like 20 of them just along this courtyard between 2 churches, which was really kind of cool. And we had quite a lot of Glühwein. Glühwein is mediocre red wine that has been spiced with cloves and cinnamon and nutmeg and stuff. And because it's warm,
the wine.
Yeah, the Glühwein is usually served warm. Put a shot of rum in it, or amaretto. Some people like amaretto. We had mit Rum. And it was pretty cold. It was in the mid-20s most of the time. Fortunately, there wasn't too much wind, at least between the buildings. But let's just say that the Glühwein was welcome. It felt a lot less cold. Probably not necessarily a good thing that it did, but yeah, so that was a lot of fun. Had what are they? Kartoffelpuffers. It is potato pancakes. They were really good. I had
probably Kartoffelpuffen.
Mm-hmm. I had bratwurst fish sandwiches. For some reason, they're popular up there.
Well, it's on the sea, right?
Yeah. That was good. I didn't like fish, so I stayed upwind of those. But, apparently they were pretty tasty. I'm just checking these things over to see if I missed any spots. There's a couple.
Could be cleaned up. Oh, where it's a little thin.
So yeah, we're in Lübeck. One day we took a day trip, took a train to Hamburg, which is like the 3rd largest port in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Down on the river, and just as we got down to the river, there was a little boat, actually a fairly big boat. I was down to find out what was going on, so we took a harbor tour, which was pretty cool. We saw one of the largest container ships in the world, just undocking. Our boats were pulling it out. A lot of containers like that. And they're actually building some ships there.
Oh, it's a ship.
It's still a shipyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we saw several ships under construction, including a couple of naval vessels. There were frigates. That was cool. Like any, older port, they have a museum of ships. So there was a really beautiful sailing ship, three-masted ship, and a Soviet-era diesel submarine that for some reason is in Hamburg.
Just hanging out.
We didn't, just hanging out. We didn't have time to take any of the tours on the ships, but it looked like that would be kind of a fun way to spend even a full day just going from one to the next. There was also a freighter. I can't remember the name of it. It was like an Art Deco freighter. It was actually designed by a designer. It was considered to be one of the most beautiful freighters in the world at the time, and it was. It's absolutely gorgeous. By today's standards, tiny. It used to go from South America to Germany. It made that transatlantic crossing, hauling coffee and things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was really a pretty ship. It would be a lot of fun to tour that. There was a little blurb in the guidebook that said that in order to serve on the Russian submarine, you had to be 5'4" or shorter.
Because it was so cramped?
Apparently. I mean, it looked like a really big submarine. Bigger than, say, like the German submarine that was captured and is at Science and Industry Museum in Chicago, or even the U.S. submarines in World War II. It looked much bigger, but apparently it's
fairly small on the inside.
Yeah, smaller on the inside than on the outside.
Most things tend to be.
Yeah, unless it's a TARDIS.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, that would be another fun trip, is to spend a couple of days in Hamburg when it was above freezing. Probably it would make it a little bit more. Yeah, so we did that. Then went to Berlin. That's where Alex and Erica live. They have an apartment in Berlin. They cooked us a Cuban Christmas dinner. Black beans and rice, chicken, marinated chicken, which was really good, fried plantains. So that was different and kind of fun. And spent Christmas Day there the next day, and then went to more Christmas markets. In Berlin, they're still open until the New Year. At least some of the bigger ones were.
So you just Christmas marketed out?
We went to every available Christmas market, pretty much, yeah. Oh yeah, and Lübeck. Lübeck is like the marzipan capital of the world or something like that.
A very prestigious title that a lot of cities fight for.
I'm sure that people are fighting over that all the time. So yeah, we went to the Marzipan Museum up on the 3rd floor of the Marzipan store, where they had the world's largest marzipan sculpture, which consisted of like 7 or 8 life-size historic figures, all done in marzipan.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. You have a couple pictures of it I need to send around. That was pretty funny. And then they had a carnival scene, where they had a Ferris wheel and rides and tents and buildings and stuff.
All to scale?
No.
Oh.
Those were small. But they were marzipan.
So they were edible.
They've been sitting there for a couple of years, but I don't think marzipan goes bad. I think it just gets harder, maybe.
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the gastronomical equivalent of like spackle.
It's almond dust and sugar.
Mm-hmm. Compacted into a paste, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of like spackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we bought some marzipans.
Almond spackle.
Yeah. So we bought some marzipans for family. Got a really cute Santa Claus about this high. It was really well done. But the highlight was the marzipan currywurst with fries. You know how marzipan often is in the shape of fruits painted, apples and bananas and pears and stuff. This was the currywurst.
So it's a bratwurst with curry.
With curry ketchup on it.
And French fries. Yeah.
It's really gross looking. Kind of like the real thing, actually.
But currywurst is pretty tasty.
Yeah. Surprisingly, we didn't have any currywurst while we were there.
That's pretty weird.
We had pretzels.
You had a pretzel day?
Mm-hmm. One pretzel day. Some of the train station pretzels aren't that great, but the bakery shop pretzels at the Christmas market.
Where they actually are baking them there?
I think.
Or nearby.
Yeah, actually there.
Yeah.
And we had Baumstreusel. Baumstreusel is interesting. It's kind of this stretchy dough.
That's a
sweet dough. That's
branch strudel.
Yeah, it's wrapped around a rolling pin, basically. It's about like that big around, 3 inches in diameter. And it's stretched out into this long, 1 inch long strip, and then it's wrapped around and cooked over coal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the authentic way to do it. It's mainly a South German kind of thing. So the one in Lübeck was okay, but it really wasn't as authentic. The one in Berlin was actually made by Austrians.
So very far south.
Yeah, very far south. It even had a different kind of name. But it was he was making it right there. Mixing the dough and making it so it was fresh, and he was cooking it over coal, which does make a difference in the flavor. So basically, it's really kind of cool because the fire is really hot, so it gets kind of brown, crispy on the outside, and it stays a little
doughy and
it's not like raw dough, but it's still has a soft,
chewy
texture on the inside. It's only like a 1/4 inch thick, so the contrast is pretty good. Then it's rolled in cinnamon sugar.
Sort of like a German churro?
Yeah, actually that was pretty weird, is that a bunch of the bakeries were selling churros.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could get churros at all of the Christmas market. We didn't, because it just seemed wrong. I mean, it seemed really wrong. But yeah, churros were kind of a big thing there. And of course you had the toasted almonds. That's big at the Christmas markets too.
Like cinnamon roasted almonds?
Oh yeah, there are like a dozen different flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Cinnamon and honey and
maple.
Mm-hmm. Even like cayenne.
Oh, cayenne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all just almonds.
Oh, they didn't have other nut options?
No, I was a little surprised. I thought they'd have like walnuts or pecans, but guess not. So yeah, Christmas market stories. The one in most of them are like wooden buildings, outdoor shed kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty standard.
Yeah.
Standardized, but the big one in Berlin actually built like a building, a tent building. It was huge. It was probably 150 yards by 50 yards, and had a lot of indoor vendors.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And an indoor bar. They made their glühwein was 50 euro cents more than the typical glühwein price.
Just because of volume?
Because they actually used good wine. It actually was good glühwein.
As opposed to it's being flavored, you don't need to use that good of a wine.
Right. You know, a lot of price fixing. Everybody's glue vine was exactly the same price.
Mm-hmm.
It was $2.50 and €3 in Germany, euro. €3 Mittelum. They all come in souvenir glasses. You have to pay between €1 and €3
Extra
deposit.
for the and then you get it back if you return it,
You return it,
or you can keep it.
right.
Gotcha.
We kept one. We kept one mug from Berlin because it celebrated Weihnacht 2020. Looked at it, it was dated, and they shut them all down last year. And so
Well, 2 years ago at this point.
Well, yeah, but 1 year ago when we went last month.
Mm-hmm. So they just kept this supply.
Yeah, so instead of throwing away a whole year's worth of blue vine mugs, they just didn't buy new ones.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Frugal, you know. If it were Italy or Spain, right, they would have just dumped them. Because
no, they would have just written.
They would have just put a 1 over it, printed a 1 over the 0. Yeah. No, there's only 2 left on. Then you have to do the edges.
2 more, and then the edges. That's it.
So how you? Oh, you can hold them in the middle then,
because they'll be dry.
Dry, yeah.
That's the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are getting through. It's 4:30, so on schedule.
Yep. So that's the Christmas thing.
Well, if you're
the main Christmas market was right at the base of the what is it, Fernsehturm?
Fernsehturm.
Yeah.
The TV tower.
Yeah.
In
we got
Berlin.
there just as it was like closing, so we didn't have a chance to go up. It was pretty tempting to go up.
I think there's a restaurant up in there now.
I know there's an observation area.
Berlin is the Fernsehturm was an old East German TV antenna tower that was built as a very distinctive sort of look.
Yeah, it has a globe near the top of it.
With a antenna sticking out of the top of the globe. So,
and inside the globe there's an observation room.
I think there's also like a very expensive cafe or bar or something up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sort of touristy.
Well, yeah. I mean, why would you go up if you weren't a tourist? Or taking a tourist? Or just wanted to buy an expensive drink at the top of the tunnel?
Mm-hmm.
So I did notice that when we were at the airport in Frankfurt, when we were leaving, that they had to build one too. There's one there that is almost the same shape
as the Fernsehturm.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, East Germans built one of these in Berlin. We have to have one, but make it bigger.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that was it. We did go to a pretty good old-fashioned German food restaurant.
German food restaurant?
Yeah, because it's hard to get, like...
As opposed to a German cat restaurant?
No.
Oh.
Traditional, as you would think of it, German food. Isn't that common?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we had sauerbraten. Sauerbraten was really good. Otherwise, like any big city,
Sushi.
Yeah.
Berlin has a lot of sushi in it. Alright, I am
almost done.
Almost.
The last of the tours.
And then I get the sides, and then I have to do a tiny bit of brown cleanup here and there on a couple spots.
So when you do the black wash, are you just gonna black wash the wood parts too?
Honestly, the black wash isn't gonna show on the wood that much. It's a very dark wood,
Yeah,
the flat
true.
brown.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to be too careful one way or the other.
Yeah.
Luckily,
Because it really won't show much.
because it really won't show all that much.
And if it does, it'll just look like weathering or shading.
Exactly. So the washing on these doors will be quite easy to do. All told. And
So it is. So this one's almost empty. Big one.
yeah, but we have two over there.
No, aren't those both umber?
Black,
No.
black, black.
No, we've got 3 small ones.
Yep.
So we've got plenty of that.
We might want more umber wash though.
Hmm.
If you want, you could start writing out a little shopping list
I could make a list.
while I finish up the doors.
Mm-hmm. You'll give me something. Are we gonna redo these towers sometime?
Yeah, we'll work on those at some point. We're just the watchtowers we did. We think they were assembled slightly wrong, so we're gonna disassemble them and reassemble them. It won't take all that much work because they're all painted up and everything already. So
Yeah, it's just a matter.
it's just a matter of cutting a little balsa wood and then repainting some balsa wood very quickly. Okay, so clean off my brush here. And the last part I need to do on these doors, let me get there in the light. So I have these little iron doors, both sides painted. And now I just need to get the edges painted. And since they're dry, I can hold them in the middle like this and just go around real quick.
This is neutral gray. Much.
It's a whole lot of neutral gray.
You said red brown?
Red brown, we could probably use like 2 more of umber wash, probably could use some more of.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about a large amount of colors and more about a large amount of specific colors.
Mm-hmm.
We should be okay on the dark gray. I think we have like 1 or 2 jars extra.
On the flat earth, we've got 2 jars of the dark gray.
Yeah.
We don't use that as much.
No, not usually.
In the flat earth, we've got. That seems to be okay.
Yeah.
How's that silver holding up?
The silver is fine because I use it in such limited quantities, and we have the other silver.
Mm-hmm.
We have a fair amount of ivory right now.
Yeah, I bought extras of those because we couldn't get that at all for a while.
Yeah, we were having issues with supply on the ivory.
Any other colors that we want?
I'm not sure. I'm just looking around, trying to think if there's anything we use a lot of that we might want to restock on. The flat brown is okay right now.
Yeah, we could get another one. We have to order it.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have 1 extra on. That's one we use fairly often. So here's a completed door, holding it in the middle because the sides are wet still. But just set that down to dry.
Yeah, I don't see anything on here that we use a lot.
That isn't what we've already written.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you can kind of see it, like, if they have a different brown than the kinds we have, those are always good, or a different gray.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good to have a little variation, so you can, like, have 2 separate types of wood or stone in a piece. The buff might need to be restocked. We do use that fairly regularly. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's about a third.
I'll get another
left. We're okay on primer. That airbrush primer goes very slowly. Like, you don't need a lot to do a lot.
Yeah, it's much better than the spray cans in terms of
Health and environmental.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just in terms of how much you end up using.
It's just generally better all around, but the big disadvantage of it is you need to have an airbrush.
Yeah.
Which is expensive if you don't have one already.
Yeah, as you found out, it's noisy too.
Yes, it's noisy, and
even cradled in the
one problem I found is that if you're spray painting or air spraying black primer on a black print,
yes,
sometimes you're just like, I really hope this is covered,
because you can't really tell. Yeah, we have a lot of the black primer, but that's all we could get. Couldn't get the base.
I actually prefer black primer for painting. It can be a little hard to tell if you're spraying it onto a black piece, but
yeah, but when you're painting gray onto gray primer.
But the nice thing about a black primer over any other color primer is that it can help add it's subtle, but it will add a little bit more depth to the color of whatever you're painting, because you don't have a lighter color that can sort of shine through. Mm-hmm. So if your paint goes a little thin onto it, it can actually create a nice dimensionality to it. Just a little more contrast and darkness to it. So black primers are kind of nice for that part of model painting. Alright, 3 doors down, just like the band. And onto the 4th. I'm getting very close to finishing this door project. Very exciting. Oh, whoops. I was not done painting that. Moving a little ahead of myself here. My excitement to be done painting small silver lines everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Would you like me to do the brown touch-up?
Sure, if you want. Be careful, because they're
still
drying,
wet. Yeah.
So it'll be a little bit of a pain. You could, if you feel like, go through the 2 gray bottles and see if there's anything salvageable, but honestly, I wouldn't really like thin them or anything like that. There.
No, that's pretty much.
I was kind of scraping the bottom to get.
All that's left is a little bit of. Yeah, there's like, if you put some alcohol in this one,
you could maybe get like
2
one.
brushes, maybe.
Yeah, I was really scraping the bottom of the bottle to get what I did get done.
Yeah, I can't really pick those up because I have to pick them up by the edges.
Yeah, so at this point, I would just
leave it.
It's fine to just hang out.
So it looks like it's time to start unbending paper clips.
Yeah, I'll want to detail and finish everything.
Mm-hmm.
But did I do all the sides? No, I missed 1 and 2. I keep doing that. I have to like triple check myself and make
because
sure.
it feels like it should be done.
Yeah. It feels like I finished, but I haven't. Yeah, well, get through all of these, and the very last thing you do is glue in the little hinges, because then you don't have the door in the way when you're finishing painting anything. But I probably should go back and like check all of the, make sure I actually finished all the edges on all of them before I put the silver away.
You did.
Okay.
Those 5 are done.
Alright, 5 more to do. I'll probably want to clean this brush with a little alcohol if you want to get that out. Just because this is a nicer brush, it's not been beat up for years. I'm going to try and preserve that. I'm using a slightly stronger solvent than water. It's an easy way to get all of the paint out of the brush, especially when you've been painting a large volume of silver like this. I think it's on the shelf under, yeah.
It's under your foot.
Under my foot. We were doing a little gluing and Lexi was epoxying a tree ornament together, and we had the isopropyl alcohol out to clean our fingers of all the epoxy, because it was a little messy.
Yeah,
sliding.
No matter what you do, it always jumps onto your fingers.
For some reason, the glue is sticky. And given the time we're at, I probably, and the amount of drying and everything, we'll probably be finishing the doors next time that we stream. I think we're looking at adding another day or two of paint streaming, especially since this new chair height is helping a lot in terms of my physical comfort.
Yeah. You're looking at adding another day rather than lengthening the amount of time.
Well, I'm not sure yet, but maybe both. Maybe one or the other.
If we have enough projects. Yeah.
But that was a big limiter for me on doing these painting streams, was that the chair I was using was very uncomfortable, and I just couldn't stand it after a while. But so far, I've been doing a lot better at this lower height.
You want a cushion? Should we get a cushion for it now?
I don't know if that would really matter at all. Honestly. But I am pleased with this change. Yeah, I'm gonna need a little extra silver to get through. There's one section of these where it was the part that was on the print bed, and that always creates a little bit of like this, I guess, waffling effect, which just takes a little extra paint to fill because you get these little micro holes.
Yeah, like opposite these door frames.
Yeah, where where the 3D printer, we do a PLA printer here that is just a little string of plastic getting deposited while it's hot. And the area where it adheres to the bed has this slight waffle effect, and it's fine to paint. It's not really a problem, but it takes about twice as much paint to do that area because while it doesn't look like it, that small amount of waffling pretty much doubles the surface area. Because you have all the edges of it as well as the top and bottom. So it's just sort of a subtle thing, but it eats up a little extra paint here and there, and is a little slightly harder to paint or more annoying. But on the upside, if you have a 3D printer like we do, making a huge dungeon set like this is a lot more cost effective. If you're willing to do the building and painting of it yourself, saving probably for a set this large thousands of dollars than buying one pre-made. Because little dungeons like this for D&D are very cool, but they can be quite expensive if you're buying them from... There are a variety of companies out there that produce them. And, I mean, even we're thinking about selling these at a fairly reasonable price for what you have to do for them, but if you're ever interested in making D&D figures and models like this, after not that long, having your own 3D printer can make it a much more cost-effective approach to get all this. But it does take time, because especially if you're painting it all yourself. So it's a give and take. But it can be very fulfilling to, you know, set up a really awesome battle with like a dragon and everything on the table is something you've painted yourself. I feel like that can be a very little moment of pride for you. One more drop. Just one, please. Close enough.
Should I get one more silver, do you think, or is there plenty in there?
It's like half full. If you want to, you can get an extra one. It's a very useful color. It's Chainmail Silver by Vallejo. It's a very useful one for a lot of these sort of structural iron pieces. I use it a fair amount for like bindings on chests, fittings on wagons, things like that. It gets used in small applications, but fairly consistently. And if we're putting in a paint order, I guess it wouldn't be a bad one to restock. So, there is a stack of doors. Is that the alcohol? Great. Just doing a quick water wash to get the bulk of.
Yeah, wash it in there. I'll wash this off, and then we'll dump it in the silver too.
Clean the bottom of the... Okay. So, there's not too much, but it is getting out some of the... They almost use like... It's like a metal flake to get that shiny effect. And sometimes those can linger in a brush. It's always good to get those out. take too long for me to wait for all of these to dry and then wash them today. But this one is dry enough to handle. Here is, let me stand up and get on. So upside down. There we go. Here's the door. The next step in doing these doors is to clean up any little silver spots in the wood parts of the door. If I got any silver in that lower brown part, I want to touch that up quick. And then I will go through each door and tone down the silver to make it look more like an iron using a black wash. And we will, then what you do is there's this little hole that runs through the print of the door, and you run a wire through that, a small gauge wire, and that wire goes through the holes either side, depending on which way you want the door to open, of these dungeon tiles, and that leaves you with a door like this that will open like so and stay upright. So that'll be something we work on next time. We'll want to if we get the gray, we'll work on our huge pile of dungeon tiles that need to get this base coat of gray on them, and we'll want to finish up these tiles as well before we put the doors in. You want them completely finished before you glue in a hinge. But that is for another time. We're just hitting 5 now, so thank you so much to everyone who is watching.
Yep, thank you.
On Sunday, we're going to be back live with, well, not live. We used to be live. We're recording now. For the sake of production and some of our crew's schedule. But we will be back from our winter break with our D&D show this Sunday. That's the 9th of January. We're going to be airing our main D&D show again, where we're currently adventuring through a changeling city and fighting evil capitalists who are trying to exploit cultural heritage of other people. Basically what's happening. So, make sure you tune in this Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, here on this Twitch channel, and thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.